Hello, hello, and welcome to yet another episode of Black Atlantic. My name is Clinton Davis. This is Hilary LeBlanc, aka Cropberry, and welcome to the show.
This week, we're going to be talking about a wide range of topics, ranging from Britney Spears getting slapped, Gigi Hadid getting caught with weed in the Cayman Islands, a Montreal TikToker named Pinky Doll, who has a weird claim to fame in my books, and also a long-term care facility in Nova Scotia geared towards Black people.
If you're not already, please make sure you subscribe to Black Atlantic on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your weekly podcasts, as well as make sure you follow us on all our socials at Black Atlantic.
Here we go.
All right. So we're going to get right into it. This event happened a few weeks ago, although you may or may not have heard about it. Britney Spears, global legend, huge sensation, famous person who's been in the spotlight for most of her life, was in LA, I believe, and she had caught a couple basketball games. There's an NBA star named Victor Wembanyama, and she had seen him twice throughout the same day, and she said she was a big fan of him. So at a restaurant later on in the day, she wanted to say hi. She wanted to say hello. She's a celebrity, he's a celebrity. She thought it was fine. So as Victor and his entourage, surrounded by security guards, as famous people typically tend to be, was walking away, she ran up behind, so no one could see her at all. She ran up behind them and tried to tap Victor on the shoulder. The chief of security, without even turning his head to look back at all, he brushed the hand away that was touching this multi-million-dollar superstar, and somehow in the process, there are different angles of the event. Somehow in the process, Britney got slapped in the face. So either his hand brushed her face, or from another angle I'd seen the video at, it could be that his hand hit her hand and maybe she slapped herself in the face. We don't know. Either way, she was upset. She was embarrassed. She made a bit of a scene. She started screaming out in like a weird British accent, saying like, "This is what's wrong with effing America." And I believe because they were at a restaurant, she demanded an apology. So someone from the security team did go over and apologize to her. And at the time, she appeared to accept the apology. Now, that all happened. But this is where it gets really frustrating for me. Britney Spears, she's not knocking her. I know she's had a hard life. I know she's had a long life. I know she's been in the news for like her father controlling her life, and she's had a rough run. So not hating on Britney, but here's the part where I get really upset. After all said and done, she asked for an apology. She got it. She is again a global star who has been surrounded by security her whole life and knows how security works. Like, you just can't run up on a superstar and start tapping them on the back. After all this, Britney Spears went to the police station and filed a police report against Victor and his security team for assaulting her. That's bullshit. That's absolute bullshit. Imagine this celebrity, you're a fangirl, you see a basketball player that you adore, you run up to him. Security does their job like they are supposed to do, and you understand this because you are a global sensation. You get the apology that you asked for, you make it look like it's all good, and then you go try to get this black man and his security team charged. You go to the police station and press charges. Like, what kind of behavior is that? Thankfully, and again, I think it's the LAPD. Thankfully, they looked into it and these charges were dropped. But I'm trying to bite my tongue here, and
Don't bite your tongue. We own the show. If you want,
no, I agree. I
Place.
kind of agree. I don't want to call I need to find a better word for the term that's being used, Karen. Like what kind of a Karen is Britney Spears acting like to do this? To go try to press police charges against a black man for you going up and like hitting a guy who's surrounded by security on the back and then getting your hand brushed away and somehow you got hit in the face when no one was even looking at you. Celebrity or not, you should just know that you don't do this. And then on top of that, to go file a police report, like, come on, Britney, what's going on? What are your thoughts on that?
I have conflicting thoughts. I am part of I guess I'm on the side of social media that would be like Britney talk or whatever, where I'm always hearing, sort of about like the state of her mental well-being, and like her mental well-being has not been great since,
Yeah.
The conservatorship has ended. She's always posting these very bizarre videos of her dancing and doing stuff that like I
Yeah.
find mildly alarming. And so while I definitely understand and don't necessarily have sympathy for like you should know yourself that this isn't something that people want, that celebrities tend to want to be left alone and treated like humans. You had already seen this person earlier in the day and you're going up, a second time. That these things accidentally happen, that you're around security. And sort of, I would say maybe not Karen, but the entitlement of pressing charges. But at the same time, I think that she's mildly delusional. Like, not even in this scenario, but like in general, I think that she is like manic and unwell. And so I sort of have like not sympathy, but like I just feel sad about the whole situation. That like I just don't think she still has people in her court or in her entourage and team that necessarily have her best interest at heart. It went from being so overly controlled to now being so loose that I feel like we just have someone who's unwell now steering the ship, which is also just not great. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I just think that like, obviously this isn't what should be done. I definitely don't think that like she should have pressed charges, and I'm glad that they were dropped. I do think there's something to be said about the fact that, it's a white blonde woman pressing charges against a black man that has like different connotations. But when you strip away like the color and all the race related ideas and stuff at the same time, it just feels to me like it's just a sad situation.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Okay, and so you can kind of see it right there. You can just, no one's looking at her, and you see the security guard's arm. She just kind of runs up, she taps him on the back, and you just see that the man just kind of like puts the hand, he doesn't even look. He just puts his hand back, and I don't see her get slapped in the face. I don't know if
it looks to me like her own hand hits her, because you see a black arm and then you see her
down,
white hand
and
go
a white
up.
hand up in the air. Yeah, she may have slapped herself in the face. I agree with everything you're saying.
Yeah, sorry,
go ahead. No, you go.
All I was going to say is that, like, I think that, like, what I would find the most frustrating and sad about this, like, I guess from her celebrity perspective, I would be more frustrated that, like, obviously that someone didn't turn to look to see who was approaching, but that's also the nature of like security and keeping someone safe. Like they don't necessarily have to regard who's looking. Like scenarios like this have happened before with like fans and other fandoms where it's like people accidentally get hurt being like while someone else is being protected because the people aren't looking. You're not looking to see if it's a 13-year-old little girl running up to Harry Styles or it's someone as elite, if you want to say, as Britney Spears. It's you're a potential threat. You're someone running up. You're not saying, "Hi, excuse me, I'm Britney Spears and I want to say hi." Like you're not, there's no forewarning. And so I think that she should be aware that like these things sort of happen.
And I mean, Victor's probably young. I wonder if he even knows who Britney Spears is. I mean, I'm sure he's heard the name. But in the end, I mean, you're right. You're right. I have, like, being a celebrity, especially from a young age, is probably a nightmare. Maybe not in Britney's case, but in most people's cases, yeah, you have more money than you could ever possibly figure out what to do with it, but you don't get to live a normal life. You don't get to have that social development and enough social interactions with just people in general to my camera stop working, to have a certain sense of social norms and how to behave and how to act. I'll reset my camera in a second, but again, for me, all of those things, even feeling, upset and like how dare, like, I'm Britney Spears, even if she was that kind of person, like, I'm Britney Spears, I'm important. to then later on, hours later, consciously go to a police station and file a report. In the States, it's a little different than Canada, I believe, whereas like, if you get brought into a police station, if you even get booked, if you even get registered in the police station, like you're marked for life. There are certain things you can't do. I believe you're not allowed to vote, even if you're not convicted, which is different than Canada. You just have to be arrested. And that's part of like those Jim Crow laws, right? You just get arrested and then you can't vote anymore. You lose a lot of freedoms by just getting arrested. So the fact that Britney Spears saw fit to try to press charges on this famous celebrity is what really pisses me off about the whole situation. But
I think I was just gonna say about that, I think before we like switch gears, that like I feel like to what you said, I think that if anything, she's probably had a more horrific stardom, celebritydom than most people because of the nature of the conservatorship and all of that stuff. And I think that also might attribute to the fact that, like, I wouldn't expect her to necessarily know that getting arrested and like not necessarily convicted, etc., could ruin this person's career, because I don't think she's sitting there in her white blonde elitism looking up what this could do to any person, let alone a person of color. I think that if anything, she could have been traumatized by being hit, because I believe that she's manic and has probably been through a lot, continue to be upset, let that emotion overrule, and therefore went as far as she could with it, without thinking of the consequences that would happen to Victor or how it would look to herself. Because again, like I said, if there was anyone in her court who actually cared about looking after her, they would realize that like this is sort of just backfiring, and like you said, with, for lack of better words, making her look like the Karen in this weird situation, because she could have just like let it go, and instead no one is there telling her like, hey, you were sort of in the wrong here, you should just let it slide, whatever. That's my take. I can't hear you.
I was saying, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I mostly agree. I mean, it took conscious effort to go show up at a police station to make that claim, embarrassed or not. I kept saying LA. I just want to clarify that it was actually Las Vegas. And, you know, I am in this case glad that the police didn't lay charges, because that would have been just absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, let us know what you think.
Can I ask you a question? Not to derail this podcast for a second time, but after you switched your camera, your mic got so low that now I can barely hear you. And I promise people listening that we would love to produce a proper episode 2 weeks, and that'd be great for us and technology.
We're doing good in general. No, am I still super low?
It's getting, I think, better.
Getting better.
Can you, like, in drama class, we used to do a thing where you say watermelon, cantaloupe, cantaloupe, watermelon?
Watermelon, cantaloupe, cantaloupe, watermelon?
No, I can barely hear you. Is it
all right,
me?
well, you start talking about the Nova Scotia facility.
I will start talking about the Nova Scotia thing. So in Nova Scotia, they are going to be building a long-term care facility geared towards the needs of Nova Scotian Black communities. Premier Tim Houston and Kathleen Mitchell, who's the board president of Acoma Holdings Incorporated, said that this new nursing home would be in the works and that it would be completed by 2025. It will be a 96-room facility on land near the historically Black suburbs of Loon Lake, Cherrybrook, North Preston, and East Preston, and will be culturally responsive to its residents. The care home is going to be owned and operated by the nonprofit Northwood Inc., built on the land that's leased by Acoma Holdings, which is a nonprofit set up to provide economic and social opportunities for the province's Black citizens. The land is part of property of the former Nova Scotia Home for Colored Children, an orphanage that closed in 1979. And Kathleen Mitchell, who is the board president, stated that like this is Black land, and so that having the facility there will benefit Black communities both nearby and throughout Nova Scotia. I think that's so cool. And I say that because I say that from the perspective of, if anyone is like somehow new to my life / this podcast, my mother is in a long-term care facility. And I think something that was very important, she's white, but something that was really important was the fact that she's actually in a French-speaking Acadian one, because it speaks to her childhood and cultural nuances, and it's proven that, you know, speaking multiple languages really helps with the type of illness she has, dementia. And so I can just see, I can already understand the fact that having, you know, care that is culturally responsive to a Black community in such a place where they've had such a hard time with the Black community, in terms of like, not that the hard time is with the Black community, but you know, the destruction of Africville and the way that the Black community has been treated. I think that this is a great sort of like turn of events and like the appropriate thing to do, and very important. Clinton, if I can hear you, what are your thoughts?
I think that it's cool too, and I'll preference that by saying, you know, when I was younger, I kind of bought in for a little while, growing in Toronto, to the narrative at first that like out in Nova Scotia, they had a lot of programs for Black people only, like for Black scholarships, for Black advancements, and things like that, and you know. Um, I was like, hey, you know, like slavery was in the past. We're all equal now. You know, why can't we all just be treated the same? Why is there special money for Black people over there? We should all just, and I knew nothing about Nova Scotia and its history. You know, everyone needs to be treated equally. But, you know, that's not true. Then when you learn about things like the generational wealth gap and just safe spaces and stuff like that, it really becomes different. Now, senior citizens, I have a lot of friends. I have friends who moved here from Ontario during the pandemic, and also who work in healthcare. I worked in senior citizens' homes. And unfortunately, you know, the friends I'm referring to are Black, and they experienced so much racism from these seniors. They experienced a lot of racism, like overt, blatant racism from these people in their, not everyone, but from certain residents in their 80s, 90s, and stuff like that. And so it's very easy for me to imagine why, in a senior care facility, you know, Black seniors, all of them haven't grown up in like the 1930s and 40s, and we know Canada, or maybe even the 20s, we know Canada was not some haven for Black people. I could see why they may feel more comfortable in their own safe spaces among the kind of people they grew up with in their old communities, being cared for in the way that they need, and possibly even having different health concerns. You know, watching different shows on the television, or maybe listening to different music in the public area. I think there's nothing wrong with. I think it's great to have mixed communities, but for the people who need it, I think it's beautiful to have a safe space for seniors to feel safe together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think that, like, at least also, like, from the perspective of what I've seen in terms of, like, I think you were saying about, like, I've seen, like, the majority of the personal support workers and nurses and care workers at my mom's nursing home, because it's a French one and there's so many students from, or immigrants from, like, French speaking places, and students from Université de Moncton. A lot of the people who care for my mom are Black. And so I think that it would be great for them to, you know, be able to care for people who want that representation and need that representation, so that they don't face racism, like you were saying. And like, I can imagine that it must be vice versa as well. Like, I would definitely be worried if my mother was Black, putting her in a primarily white run facility, because you already hear so many horror stories of facilities that like don't have the proper support and care, harm the elderly, mistreat them. And so, like, to also have that barrier and concern that it might be race motivated would be so frightening for me, that like, I hope that this is super successful and goes really well.
Yeah. So that safe space is being opened up, and I do think it's a good thing. Would you like to talk to us about Gigi? Is it Gigi?
Gigi? It's Gigi.
Yeah.
Gigi. So I have context about this because it was also a topic on the social, which I got to be in the audience for, which is really fun. But basically, Gigi Hadid got arrested for medical weed possession in the Cayman Islands, and I believe some paraphernalia, and also the girl that she was with also had some as well. Now, I heard some conflicting things. Obviously, where she left in the States, I think she left from either New York or Cali, so it was legal where she left. And then I don't believe it's legal in the Cayman Islands, although I thought at the social someone said that it was legal in the Cayman Islands, but the problem was like either the pit stop or flying over or something like that. But I digress. She got arrested in the Cayman Islands. For all of this, the bail posted was $1,000. She posted it, obviously, paid it, and then proceeded to post a bunch of bikini selfies on the beach saying, "All's well that ends well." Now, what sparked a lot of controversy and debate was several schools of thought. One, if she was not an affluent, white, blonde woman, would this story end this way? We know that there's a very large percentage of people still incarcerated or with weed charges in the States that have had just as small amounts as her, but because they were Black, because they were from minority communities, because they don't have the type of money to pay bail or, get expunged, if you will, the stories don't end as happily. However, there was also another group of people who felt that it was good that she posted because it shows that she's not afraid of the stigma of being a single mom who uses weed. Because the fact of the matter is she's no longer with Zayn from One Direction. She does have a daughter named Kai, and she is, openly publicly acknowledging that, yep, this is something that I had on me and something that I've gone through and something that I use, and I'm not going to talk about it any further than that. But she's also not trying to hide it or pretend that this incident didn't happen. So I sort of agree with both schools of thought that, like, at first I was very like, yeah, girl, do your thing. It's just weed. No one cares. Like, it's more weird that it's still illegal in some places to me because we, don't really see it as such a negative, effective drug anymore. But at the same time, from a Black privilege and white privilege, Black race perspective, of course, it's like this white blonde supermodel just pays $1,000 and it's now like no longer a big deal, where for so many Black people, it is still such a big deal. So Clinton, what's your take?
First off, yeah, I mean, should have never been made illegal to begin with. Having things like coffee and cigarettes and alcohol being legal, way worse and way more damaging than weed. Marijuana, the worst thing it does, I believe, is, it makes people less motivated. It makes people okay, sort of, with the mundane at times, depending on how much they consume. For other people, it can be very creative, fueling, and inspiring. But in the end, all's well that ends well. It's weird. It's certainly weird being a celebrity, in the sense that you are not really, you have all these fans and people that follow you and adore you or hate on you while following you, but you're kind of not allowed to acknowledge the fact that because of your celebrity status, you're doing well. You're doing okay. I can't reference any other stories, but I've heard of this happening before, like celebrities getting highly criticized and kind of dragged through the mud for acknowledging that they're not in a place of poverty and struggling. And I think really that's what that post was about. She had a charge for carrying legal marijuana, which I'm not sure why she was charged for that. You said it depends on the district she was in and stuff like that.
Well, I think that it's illegal in the Cayman Islands. So while it was medical marijuana purchased from New York, I don't think she was allowed to fly with it.
Right.
So I think that's the main issue.
There's that onus on her to look into those things. But I don't really, I don't care, in the sense that for her, it was all's well that ends well. And we live in a world where, like, if you're a celebrity, you're not allowed to say that. Like, why not? It was all well that ended well. Like, it could have been way worse. Now, when you bring up topics like when they decriminalized marijuana in Canada, why didn't they automatically expunge everyone who had been arrested in the past for either possession or selling, when it's something that shouldn't have been illegal to begin with? They should have it would have been easy enough to just wipe everyone's record. But in terms of information, they didn't put the information out there for everyone to easily access. And if you had a charge for carrying, using, or selling in the past, you had this criminal record that seriously negatively impacted your life, and now all of these, rich corporate, mostly non-black people are profiting off of the same thing that ruined your life in the same country that you live in. So that's kind of ridiculous. It's hard for me to care, Hillary, in the sense that, like, why are celebrities not allowed to say, oh, well, this thing happened, it could have gone really bad, it didn't, I paid $1,000 fine, which is a ton of money for some people and not so much for other people, but all was well that ended well. I don't know. I don't know.
I'm going to use this as a moment to remind people that although she is, like, for all intents and purposes, she's white and blonde, she's actually part Dutch and Jordan, like from Jordan. So technically, Gigi's sort of a woman of color, but not really.
I guess. I mean, yeah. So that's where you would throw in that term, like white passing, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Or a term I heard recently, racially ambiguous, where you can't really tell where they're from, but it's kind of passed as white presenting. Yeah. Yes. Now, I very openly have not spent a lifetime. I mean, this is just me. Like, I don't really know who a lot of celebrities are or care or know their names. I thought she was married to like a black musician at some point, wasn't she?
No.
No? Okay, I'm getting her confused. Yeah. I mean, she's definitely...
her sister Bella went out with The Weeknd for a really long time.
That's what it is. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at her, and like, I mean, I don't know what her cultural background is. She's clearly not like Western European. I would have said like, I know, I meant by looking at her, I would have guessed like Eastern European or a little, I could see a little bit of Mediterranean, Middle East mixed in there. I mean, I don't know. I have no big comment on it, other than to say that the whole weed issue is a much bigger issue, and that has affected Black people. Yeah.
What you just said, I agree.
Yeah. So let us know your thoughts. Do you have anything else to say about Gigi?
No, I like her. She's fine.
What does she do?
Oh, she's a major supermodel.
Okay.
She's like the face of Maybelline. She's walked in every major show. Her sister as well, and her brother. Her brother, who's the face of Valentino fragrances, and went out with Dua Lipa for a really long time. And her mom is a famous supermodel first, like from the 80s, Yolanda, and she was on the TV show Real Housewives of, I want to say, Beverly Hills. So all of these kids sort of grew up in that TV show and then all went on to have these like really big careers. And then Gigi had a kid with Zayn, and then Zayn from One Direction allegedly hit her mom, Yolanda. And so now, like, I don't know if he's allowed to see the child, and it's all the celebrity drama. And her dad's Mohammed Hadid, who's like really big in investment or real estate or something. They're
Mohammed
rich.
Hadid? Okay. So anyone who's following her life would have known that she's not white.
No, exactly. That's what I mean. Her real name is Jelena Hassan Hadid or something. Like, it's not a white name. She just looks white.
So you could spin it to say that she is technically a person of color.
Yeah.
Who was able to not get it, so the system worked for a person of color, depending on how you want to spin it.
Yeah. I mean,
did not know any of that.
Yeah, Zayn, like her kid's a kid of color. Her ex is a man of color. She's trying to keep it in the culture.
And again, just before we move on, and I'm the next topic's very funny for me.
But you're the one presenting it. I don't even know anything about it.
I know. But so the main complaint on the internet was that she had $1,000 to pay.
The main complaint was sort of like, look at this celebrity who can pay the $1,000, who's like sort of poking fun at getting arrested, and it should be considered so much more serious. I think because it's more serious for other people, but then other people were like, let the woman live her life. She's also a mom who's, just being honest about smoking weed, and like, if we can be moms who drink, then, like, to your point about, coffee and all the other things that people get addicted to, that was sort of the other school of thought.
Yeah. Okay. So again, yeah. I just looked it up. There's an article. Appears completely unbothered after getting arrested. So she's not allowed to be unbothered either. The media is wild. That's just crazy. I mean, I don't think she was. It's not poking fun to say all's well that ends well. It sounds like there's gratitude there.
I think it's the fact that like the all's well that ends well sounds sincere, but I think it's like the bikini photos in the post that are like, I'm still on the beach having a good time. And I think some people wanted there to be some kind of serious
It's true.
reflection because it's still committing a crime in that place. But at the same time, then it's the whole conversation we just had. Why is it a crime
Yeah.
in the first place? Is the government not expunging the records of people who have had these crimes done before? Why is this a conversation? Why is this even a big deal for her to feel some type of remorse around when it's a plant and it was medical?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's just some people on the internet like. We don't know that she didn't have any time for reflection. Like she's not allowed to be at peace in a bad situation. She's not allowed to be calm while dealing with a bad situation. I don't know. I don't like that. Okay, that was interesting though. But that's the way the internet is, right? You're gonna get every opinion, and people just hating sometimes for just because they want other people to feel misery. This is funny. I'm gonna move on. So if you haven't heard of her yet, we are gonna talk about Pinky Doll. So Pinky Doll is a famous TikTok influencer from Montreal. Let me share the screen here. You haven't heard about this at all, Hillary, other than like the little bit I told you?
I finally saw a little bit come up on my own feed that I sent to the Black Atlantic, like I sent to ourselves to share. So I saw a little bit, and I knew about the trend that you were discussing, but like by and large, educate me, please.
Absolutely. Okay. So you know that we're not like focused heavily to our listeners on having every detail right, but the main story is that Pinky Doll is a TikToker from Montreal who's a single mother, and there was some kind of situation with her job or schooling or something, but she found herself in a tough bind. I think I said that she's a single mother, and so there's been this thing on TikTok that has started to trend. It's like a NPC character. We already know that there's a lot of females out there who are people out there who have capitalized on anime and dress up in certain costumes and doll costumes, and sort of it's a fantasy thing where they emulate these anime characters, and I guess they get a huge amount of followers and men really like it. But what Pinky Doll has been doing is there's something called NPC, and those are non-player characters. Those are characters in video games who are not essential to the story. They're not main characters. You can't control them, but they're in video games, and I guess they have certain catchphrases or do certain motions and stuff like that. And people have been impersonating these non-player characters lately. Well, Pinky Doll has seemed to have cracked the code, because what she does is she goes on live. She says she spends about 6 hours a day doing lives on TikTok where she just impersonates non-player characters from popular video games. And I'll try to share a video here. I know I have the thing up, but people just are sending her money. The men are just sending her flowers and roses and all these other things that she can then cash out for money. And she's apparently making like $7,000 on average every time she goes live, just imitating silly characters from video games, and it's got the internet going a little bit wild. I mean, you have people like Cardi B reposting her content. You have Timberland saying that they're a fan. I myself found myself just like captivated for a few minutes just watching, being like, what is going on here? And then even um Sandra from Twice as Good Media, she had posted on our feeds as well after hearing about this, saying like, "Oh my gosh, I just lost 5 minutes of my life going down this rabbit hole watching this performer." It's mesmerizing in a really weird way, but it just speaks to like this isn't university. I saw comments under articles I read like, why am I even in college, from other females. This is not a university accredited profession. It's not a powerful job. It's not something that you have to work your way up to. It's also not, and I don't care people who are in this, but it's also not OnlyFans or porn or stripping. It's this area in between where women are doing things on camera, and men are loving it, and they're getting paid for it. Do you want me to play a little compilation clip here, Hillary, before you comment on it? Have you seen her yet?
No, I haven't really
Okay,
seen it. I
let's
don't
see if
think.
this works. I haven't been to this website before, but let's just see what she does here. So, like in a video game.
Thank you, Eddie. I love you.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it. I don't know what's going on. So, like, when you play video games, there are characters, and they do like they have repeated movements. It's like a GIF, right? They'll just be standing there, or just doing background stuff. And in the one clip I did watch, she was talking a lot more. She was just repeating phrases over and over and over again. But the world is changing, and Pinky Doll from Montreal, she's making like on average $7,000 a day doing that. It's wild. You are making many facial expressions.
I don't know how to continue this podcast. Let me in my most PC way preface all of this by saying I am a feminist, and I think that women should do whatever they want to do to make money and make ends meet. Sex work is real work, all of that cool stuff. However, I find this whole thing so cringy. Like, first of all, let me say, like, play video games. And I know you're explaining for our listeners, but like, I knew what an NPC was. I've played The Sims.
Yeah.
They bounce around in the background. They do the
Yeah.
stuff, like whatever, Halo, all that fun stuff. Got it. I think where I have an issue personally, for me, to try to put myself in the shoes of would I ever do this? Because let's frame it that way. No, because I think that it portrays still an objectification of women, in the sense that like it's like an obvious over sexualization if you're looking at the outfits, because there's no, like, at least in the videos you just showed me, there's no real dialogue, there's no interaction, there's no idea that there's any intelligence, because it's supposed to be a background character doing nothing. Very much feeds into this idea of like, hot girl says minimal, looks good on camera, I'm gonna jerk off to that. Like, there's nothing stimulating about it. I again applaud, capitalizing on men's need to look at pretty things and send money to them because they like breathe. Cool. But I just think for me, I would find trying to get into, this type of character just to like bebop around on a screen and then say 4 catchphrases super degrading and uninteresting and invaluable. But that's like, I prefer to try to make money talking about social issues and about this type of stuff than to be the person doing the stuff. But I just don't. I get it. Like, I get why it works and I get why she's making the money. It could just never be me. I think that it is like, in a way, both advancing feminism and pulling feminism back. So I don't like it. That's
yeah.
me.
I hear you. Okay, one little other
Play,
clip.
balloon. Roses. No spicy. I'm hungry.
Okay, so I just had to play that little extra bit because just for the audio portion of it. But I mean, I hear you. I mean, it's obviously sexualization. There's no way around that. These men aren't giving money because they're not attracted. The women are pretty, dressed provocatively, and doing motions that make them feel, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe you can help me here. Like submissive, like no intelligence, no personality, just like objects, like sex dolls, maybe.
I would add to that too, there's like an infantilization of it. Like I know that like from I think a more Asian culture perspective, they call them uwu girls, the girls who like play video games and they talk in the video gamer voice and they're like, hee, come play with me. Like that to me is bordering on gross behavior because one, at the premise, remember back when TikTok was an app for kids and like either kids are going to see this and think that they should be doing this or that this is a type of role play that they should be interested in, or they're going to watch it thinking it's content for them because it's about video games, when I don't think that any of this is for kids. And so I just think that it's this very weird, it's weird.
Uru girls. Okay, yeah, I was using anime, but I guess what I'm talking about is Uru girls. Yeah, and there's also a sense of pubescence to it, like like these girls are obviously acting much younger than their age, like in a way, which I guess some men find attractive. And the question is, my camera keeps turning off. The question is, and I've heard this even from way back in the day before things like TikTok and OnlyFans were around, but who is it degrading to, or who is it more degrading to? Is it more degrading to men, or is it degrading to the person who is performing the action? Because it's the I would say primarily 99%, it's the men that are funding this. It's the men that are paying out of pocket to watch a woman do this instead of focusing on their life, on who they are, on having their life together, on building meaningful relationships outside of a TikTok app. Is it degrading to the woman who's doing it, or to the men who are just sitting there all day long funding this woman? How many men are funding her to begin with? $7,000 a day.
Hundreds
of men.
I think that's got to be hundreds based on what I know the amounts of like the various things you can send on TikTok live like to be. And that is a really good question because like part of me wants to say, and like I hope that this isn't rude to anyone, but part of me wants to say that like if this is where you're spending your money and this is what's like getting your rocks off, I would be mildly embarrassed by that. But at the same time, that's why it's there. That's how advertisements work. That's how things work, because sex sells and people have niches and fetishes and kinks and they find them and they fund them. And that's how that works. And at the same time, if I was her, which I'm not, I would be embarrassed by doing that. But that's also why I'm not her. So in my mind, I would be degraded if I was her doing the thing less than if I was the person just succumbing to like what works in terms of this is the goal, is to get men to pay for this. So like to me that's valid, but at the same time I also think that like if you're the person paying for that's also sort of embarrassing. So I don't know, it's weird, but like people pay for porn, people pay for feet pics, people pay for lots of things that are not available on TikTok and not funding a single black mom. So I do support that part of it, but that's just how things work. I just hate like the infantilizing of it. And like, I just hate that, like, I guess that at least with porn, it's like, it's more obvious what you're getting into and what it is versus this, where it's like, I think it's hot having a girl pretend to be a character. And like, it's almost like the humanizing of like, if we did like live action Lara Croft, like that's the one, right? Tomb Raider. Everyone's like Lara Croft, Tomb Raider. Oh my God. And it's like, now I'm going to like send her money through TikTok. Like, it's just weird.
I agree. It's interesting, and I really want to be careful here to make it not seem like we're judging anyone, the men or the women. Just like you said, women can do whatever they want. A man can do whatever he wants with his money. If that's your thing, go ahead. I couldn't imagine myself like throwing money on a TikTok app to watch someone like repeat the same catchphrase over from a video game all the time, but that's fine, and it's making her lots of money, and it's supporting her family, and she's out there doing it. I don't know.
Fun if they were like NPC characters that like at least from what you showed, I didn't recognize any. Like I like the ones where it's like, you have a whole cosplay situation and it's like the woman who runs the bar in an Irish community and someone's there like getting their like I don't know, their beer before they go on a big quest, and you say things that relate to the game. But it doesn't sound like she's saying anything that relates to a specific like game or fandom or genre. And so it's just like turning yourself into an NPC versus playing specific ones. And so I find that interesting as well.
I mean,
Like, I don't know.
I wouldn't know. There's hundreds of games out there. I'm sure she is impersonating characters. And again, there's no way to avoid the fact that it's not just about gaming. There's obviously a sexual aspect to it. If it was, I'm sure I'd like to see if there's a guy that could be as successful as this, or if just a regular person not dressed in a way with like makeup on or sexualized or looking like a cartoon character, if they could have the same effect. But it's just what it is interesting. It's really interesting, the world that we live in, all the different ways to make money out there, and it's something that she's doing for herself. I mean, again, my last thought, and it's a whole other episode probably, like equality in the workplace, but is this more degrading than working in a corporate workplace environment where you're being disrespected and sexualized by men above you, or like your corporate bosses, or back in the day like being like hands on shoulders touched inappropriately and stuff like that, or like expected to act a certain way in the workplace? I know it's not public, but I mean, is it degrading if she doesn't feel degraded? Is being
and I mean, at
is being
least
Ariana Grande degrading? I know she's got a
Grande.
Grande. I don't know. I don't really do the celebrity thing. that's why we work well.
That's why we work well together. I'll say
Yeah.
this. At least she can choose her own hours.
Yeah, I mean,
I love that work from home life. And again, girl, get that bread. Do your thing. Do your uwu thing. That's fine. Just not for me.
it's like, and I don't support the selling of crack cocaine on the streets, but that's the dealer mentality, and that's like back in the day, like if I don't do it, someone's going to do it. Someone's going to be selling these drugs to these people, and you arrest one crack dealer, then someone else just takes that corner. It's not right, but I mean, again, is it the person making the content, or is it all the people giving her the if it wasn't working for her, if she didn't have millions of people watching her giving her thousands of dollars every day, she'd probably stop doing it. So is it the problem men in society who, instead of going out there and building real relationships, are content to have this fantasy world online where they're just paying money to women they'll never meet to watch them do repetitive actions on a camera? Or is it the women that are the problem? That's my big question. But we longer than we expected. I think that's a wrap. Do you have anything else to say?
No.
All right. Thank you to all of our listeners. We'll have a guest again next week, I think. But let us know if you have any thoughts whatsoever on Britney Spears, the Nova Scotia facility, Gigi Hadid, Giuliani, Hadid, and Pinky Doll, Hadid. Thanks for listening. My name is Clinton Davis. Please make sure you follow us on Black Atlantic on all our socials, especially TikTok, like just we talked about today. Hillary LeBlanc, aka Cropberry. At least I know your names and handles. And we is out.